All right, we would like to welcome our visiting Rotarians from the Lake Hickory Club. We have Floyd Lucas and Steve Snyder. And from the Newton Conover Club, we have Tom Warlick and Jim Rice. So welcome.
Okay, thanks for being here. How about visiting other visitors in the dining room? Anybody down the right side? Shoot.
President David, I have as my guest today Ben Jenkins with Jenkins Funeral Service.
Welcome, Ben. Anybody else down the right? How about middle? Rusty?
I have as my guest my nephew, Alan, has worked with the International Guard and he also works for them full-time in helping returning veterans, trying to employ them in their area.
Welcome, Mike. Anybody else down the middle? Okay, about the left. Any visitors down the left side? Okay. Well, it's good to be back, right? Seems like a month or more that we haven't been here. I had to brush up on my order of worship, so to speak, make sure we got everything in. So it's great to be back, and I hope you have it still on your calendars for 2015. Now, if you had to, last year I told you put it on your calendar every week, so it's 2015. So get it on there, make it automatic, so that every Thursday this is where you're going to be. And somebody says, "Can you have a meeting Thursday at 12?" You say, "No, I'm going to Rotary, but please join me." So that's where you want to be. We did have our last meeting as a joint meeting with the Friends of Hickory. If you missed that, you missed a really nice event. Friends of Hickory put on a great event there at the crossings at Holler Mill and showed off the concept drawings that we provided the funds for. And I hope you've seen those. We have them on the website. They came in the newsletter, and then they were posted that night. So it was a great event. And there was applause for three things, twice when Hickory Rotary was mentioned and once for Allison Holtzman, who, of course, has spearheaded all this. So we were duly cited as being crucial to this thing happening, and everybody appreciated that. So your money was well spent. I have, if you haven't seen anything, I have one of the master plans that shows the pictures and things like that, so you're welcome to come look at that. You can't have it because they're $4 a piece and they didn't print many of them. But they are on the website and everything, but feel free to come by and look at that. So that was a great thing, and I think we did a good job there. Actually got another meeting. I'm meeting with them this afternoon and trying to get the actual construction moving along and get their fundraising going. They hope to have fundraising done by June and start construction soon after that. So the city has passed off on it at this point to let them do fundraising, so all that project is moving along. We're happy about that. Suzanne Trolland is heading up our Open World program. This is a great program. It's really getting exciting as it gets closer, and I'm going to let her tell you about that.
I thought you were sweating whether or not I was going to get here. Sorry about that. All the details are starting to come together for a delegation of Russians who are coming to Hickory. The arrival date is February 28th, and they're going to be here through the 8th of March. They are all in the field of addictions, and I'm going to be setting up some itineraries for them to go around our community and see how we deal with substance abuse in our community. So it's a really neat program, and it's sponsored by Rotary International and by our United States Rotary as an effort to promote peace and world understanding, certainly with everything that has been going on in Russia and the Ukraine in the past year or two. It's a pretty interesting group of folks to get to know and talk with. I have a challenge. I need hosts to keep these people in their homes. One of the ways to keep the cost low is to do in-home hosting. And I think that the best way to do this, there'll be a total of 6 people who are coming. They'll be here for 8 nights, and I would like to split it up so that each of them has 2 different homes that they get to spend time in. So I'm asking for people to host one person for 4 nights in their home, either the Sunday night, the 28th, through Tuesday, the 3rd, or Wednesday, the 4th, through Saturday, the 7th, in their home. And I'm going to have a sign up over here at the table at the end of the meeting. Now, my husband didn't think that there were going to be very many people who would step up in this club, because people are a little bit uncomfortable with having somebody who's a foreigner stay in their home, and I think he's wrong. So I'm looking for 12 people. yeah, and Clarence says not the first time, but I'm looking for 12 people to come and sign up and do this. I think it's going to be very enjoyable. We have some fun activities going on. One of the things that's already been arranged is that Hani Nassar with the Hickory International Council has offered to sponsor a Russian film on Thursday night with the Foot Candle Society, and these folks are going to be part of a panel to discuss that film. Lots of neat things going on, so please come and see me after the meeting to sign up to host. Thank you.
Do they speak English?
They all speak English. They're listed as being basic conversational or fluent, and that's one of the things I would like to point out is that they are meeting you more than halfway with speaking your language to do this, and so I think that's really cool and encourage you to do it. Thanks.
We're trying to get more emphasis on international projects, and this is a great way to do that. And Suzanne, there are three men and Suzanne, 3 men and 2 women, and then
The sixth person is a woman as well, so
the
it's 3
facility.
men.
Okay, so 3 and 3. All right, so you get your choice on that. First in, gets the choice. Okay. John Rambo will give us Idle update. Idle is approaching and things are happening. We've had first round of auditions, and John's going to update us on it.
Thank you, President David. It was a great song today. We should all try out for the St. Luke's Choir. I saw their banner out in front of the church on the way here, that they are looking for choir members. Yeah, things are rolling along for Idle. We did have 2 sessions of auditions this past week. Unfortunately, the extreme cold weather on Thursday really hampered people coming out, so we're having a 3rd makeup session on January 31st, and I thank Sandy for coordinating that. Where we stand today in ad sales and sponsorships, we're at about 13,500, which is a little less than halfway to our goal of 29,000. Next week, the credit card machine will be functioning out here in the lobby for ticket sales, for ad sales, sponsorships, or any other donations, and we're not limited to just running cards that are actually present. If you've legally gotten someone's credit card number for Rotarian Idle and have the amount, we can type that in here. And also, starting next week, we'll have sign-ups for the 2 service projects. One on February 21st at Cooperative Christian Ministries, and the one at St. Albans for Stop Hunger Now on March the 7th. We're gonna be asking contestants this year to participate in the service project. We wanted that because Rotary is about service above self, so we wanted to get them in the habit of service, and then also it's a great opportunity for the club to turn out en masse to show their support for the contestants and for Rotarian Idol. So that's February 21st and March the 7th will be the 2 dates that we'll be doing service projects, and we'll have sign-up sheets here for that. That's all I have right now. Thank you very much.
No applause for Joe. Keep it up for Joe. The committee's working hard, and it's a big deal, as you know, and we're going to be on it heavily between now and March 7th, because this is where we are able to do the things that we're able to do. And we want you to feel committed and involved, and we're trying to do more and more things to be involved instead of just writing the check. Write the check too. We want to do that. John.
President, excuse me, I wanted to interject something here on Suzanne's project. I just apologize. We're going to be out of town and we can't do it, but I have, Harry and I have hosted group study exchange before in another district, and this is a fantastic opportunity to get to meet some people from far off and learn some really interesting things. So I urge people to come out and help support this. It is a great thing to do. It's very much worth it.
Thank you, John. Thank you. I'm sure everybody will prove Vince wrong. Okay, we will be having our annual club birthday and sweetheart luncheon on February 12th. So be sure to mark your calendars for that. Be sure to invite someone to that. We'll have entertainment by some of the idle contestants. We'll have a special meal, and we're planning some other things too. So make sure that you've got that prominently on your calendar on the 12th. Then also on the 19th, we will be having a meeting, not here, not at noon, but we'll be meeting at Hickory Community Theater, and we'll be meeting all the contestants for Idol. At that time, they'll be with us, and there is a play that night. We'll be starting at 5 o'clock, and there'll be a $10 charge. We're working out food and theater tickets. There'll be discounted tickets. The tickets, depends on how food costs as to how much the theater costs. So we're working on the details. But the 19th, we will be at 5 o'clock at Hickory Community Theater instead of noon here. So 12th and 19th of February, make those notes on your calendar. Also, on Valentine's Day, that night, the Sunrise Rotary Club is having what they call their Rotary Jam. They have once a year. It is their fundraiser. And this year they are having the Fantastic Shakers at Holler Mill, and there'll be shag lessons early and dancing later and silent auction and all kinds of things going on at Holler Mill. Those tickets are $30 a piece, and that is their fundraiser. For their money goes towards scholarships. So keep that in mind. We'll be broadcasting that on our newsletter as well. We have the board has adopted the strategic plan. Thanks to all those that worked on it, particularly Lamar and Guy, who really did shouldered the biggest load on that and put that thing together. It was presented to the board accepted it. Now there is an implementation committee, the core of it is formed, and it will grow. Mark Seaman will be doing the implementing of that, and we've got a lot of work to do between now and July when that thing starts. And it really needs to be done in June to have all our committee heads done in place. So we will get copies of that out to you. We'll have those published so that you can see what that is, and just wanted you to know that that is moving forward, and we again appreciate the work that's been done on that so far. Okay, any other announcements? I think I've got all the ones I put down. John Olson has our Rotary moment. Still coming.
About as slow as the beginning of that meeting. Actually, the applause sounded a lot like the applause at Cameron Indoor after Duke's loss on Tuesday. Whoa.
And Sunday. Well, it was at PNC Arena. So.
There was. No, that was the state game. I said they lost the second game to Miami on Tuesday.
I just wanted to make sure everybody knew it was Tuesday.
There you go. All right, go Pack. Since we haven't met since last year, I've got quite a few birthdays. No, don't say oh no. No Appalachian news. All right. The birthdays, since we didn't meet last week, Joab Cotton on the 1st, Kyler Dunbar on the 3rd, Michael Blackburn on the 7th, Susan Huffman on the 11th, Lamar Mitchell on the 12th, John Bray on the 13th, and Susan Smith Walker on the 14th. So happy birthday to everybody. And I've just got a short story. Applause. This is a story my dad told me. My dad's 85 years old. He lives in Hickory. He lived with my mother in Pine Knoll Shores for 12 years. He's got some very near and dear friends in Pine Knoll Shores, Dick and Linda Cumberland. I know them well. They've shared time with me, and Dad was telling me a story that Mr. Cumberland had shared with him. They're much like many of our seniors these days. They pick up technology a little bit more slowly than others, and they had just started texting each other and others, friends and neighbors, but they had just learned how to text. And Dick's kind of a no-nonsense guy. Linda's very emotional and romantic, and she went out with a friend for drinks and lunch and down at the coast, and she was missing Dick, so she texted him, and I don't want to miss anything. She wrote, and this is really kind of, it almost makes you cry. If you are sleeping, send me your dreams. If you're laughing, send me your smile. If you're eating, send me a bite. If you're drinking, send me a sip. If you're crying, send me your tears. I love you. Well, a couple minutes later, Dick texts her back and she receives it. He said, "I'm on the toilet. Please advise."
You may get to come again. All's well that is well. Okay. Clarence Pugh has our program today.
Thank you, President Dave. Next month, 53 years ago, Duke Power Company offered me a position, a job, maybe more than a position, offered me a job. And since I grew up in Carolina Power and Light service area, I didn't know much about Duke Power. So I went in to talk to Professor George McCrary, who was chairman of the department, to seek some wisdom about this decision. So those of you who remember Professor McCrary, he cut right to the bottom line, and he said, "How much are they going to pay you?" And I said, $440 a month. He said, "You better take it before they change your mind." So I took his advice, and I never regretted it. And in the 11 years I was with the power company, I certainly by no means learned all that I should have during that period of time. But I did learn at least a couple of things that continue to impress me today. And one of those is that Duke Power, Duke Energy, is a major player in the communities that they serve. Piedmont Carolinas, the Southeast now, the Midwest, they are major players in the economic development in those communities. And for that, I was proud to be a part of it in those days. The other thing that impressed me was that Duke Power, with the exception of one or two hires that they made in the 60s, hire good people. They hire people who are citizens, good citizens. They hire people who don't mind giving back to the community. And they, as a corporation, do that. Their brand, as you may remember, for many years was citizenship and service. And our speaker today, Robin Nicholson, is the district manager for Duke Power in the 5-county region that Catawba County is part of. She serves as district manager in Alexander, Burt, Caldwell, Catawba, and McDowell counties. And if you looked at the spoke and her resume there, or bio there, you saw that certainly she, as a employee and as a individual citizen, is giving back in many, many ways to our communities. And for that, we are grateful. Serving on the United Way boards in all these communities where she's serving. She served on the board of CVCC, foundation board at CVCC. She's been involved in public schools. She was on the Hickory, Greater Hickory Classic committees. And so she has been giving back in many ways, as many of the Duke people that you and I have known over the years have. She was active in 4-H. And she told me that, and she continues to be active in 4-H, and she told me that one of the things that she credits her speaking, public speaking ability to is the fact that 4-H made her get up in front of folk and do that kind of thing as young as 10 years of age. And so that certainly speaks well for the experience that you get from those programs like that. Her husband, Rick, also is a Duke employee working out of Charlotte. They live in Lincoln County, and certainly we're happy to have Robin with us today. And let's give a warm Rotary welcome to Robin.
I'm going to be over here talking and show you a few slides that you'll refocus over this side of the room. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me to be here. It's my pleasure, and I know so many folks in the room, and it's good to see you all. When Clarence and I were talking about, what direction, I said, you want a presentation on Duke Energy? Well, we need to narrow that down because I've only got so many minutes, and I'm going to try to, try to get through those fairly quickly. But so far, what I do is give you a very quick update on where are we today, who is Duke Energy today, and where do we stand today. And then let's go sort of time travel and go back and say, how did we get where we are? What was our humble beginnings? So to start with, just talking about Duke Energy, we are committed to North Carolina. We're committed to all the regions, all the communities that we serve in. So we are definitely committed to North Carolina. We've been here for over 110 years, going into our 111th year. So we're here. The headquarters originally was in Charlotte. It still to this day remains in Charlotte. So we are committed to North Carolina and all the communities that we serve. Just some quick statistics. This is just North Carolina. Clarence mentioned that Duke Energy is a major player in all of our communities. Well, we're actually the largest, since we merged with Progress Energy a few years back, we're actually the largest electric utility in the United States. Now that's good and that's bad. It can put a target on your back, as we have found out. But it's also good because it gives us the opportunity to be more involved and to have more resources at our disposal to help with those communities that we serve. But just in North Carolina, I said we've been here over 110 years, 3.2 million customers. 5 of our 11 nuclear plants are operating in North Carolina. 13,000 employees, over 13,000 employees just in the state of North Carolina. But the number that I really love is almost 9,000 retirees. 9,000 retirees who are still very active with the company and who remain involved with the company, helping with a lot of our volunteer efforts throughout their day-to-day lives. Annual investment for charitable giving and also for economic development remains high and something that we continue to focus on. We continue to have some of the lowest rates in the nation, particularly in the Southeast, and one of the ways we do that is through our diversity mix of generation. This is just a quick graph to show you that of the different fuel sources we use for the various generation plants we have throughout the region, what that percentage is. And you can see almost half of that is nuclear. Nuclear energy is the cheapest form of energy for us to operate. So that is what we consider our base load, and that does comprise almost 50%. Now the rest of these numbers fluctuate a little bit because we're gradually shutting down some of our coal facilities. We've increased some of our natural gas. The renewables piece goes up and down depending on, I should say how the wind blows, but that would be too much of a pun, so I won't say that. Y'all started the comedy act. I'm just following up on it, okay? Coal has been in the news a lot, and I couldn't give an update without mentioning coal ash. And I know unless you have been off on some remote island for the last year, you've heard something about coal ash. There's been a lot in the news. Some of it, let me just say, don't always believe everything you read. And if you've got a question about coal ash and you see something in the news, call me. I'll be glad to help. But this is a map just depicting the various coal plants that we have, coal-fired plants we have across the state of North Carolina. Some of these are retired, some are still active, and we're gradually closing more and switching some, in some cases on the same site, to natural gas. So this just gives you a depiction of where the coal-fired plants are. The closest one to us here is Plant Marshall down on Highway 150. I'm sure if you've ever been down 150, you've seen this massive building, and especially since we've added the cleaning elements to the sulfur dioxide, that's, you've seen that. It looks like everybody says it looks like an amusement park ride with all the little tunnels and everything. What put coal ash in the news? Well, it was an incident at our Dan River station. This is an aerial view of Dan River prior to February 2nd of last year. And that was February 2nd, so we're coming up on the anniversary of this Dan River event. What happened, and you can see in the upper left corner, that is the ash basin. That's an ash pond. That's the primary ash pond. What happened was not a breach in the dam for the ash pond. It was not a breach in the ash pond itself, but actually it was a pipe, a stormwater pipe that ran underneath our primary ash basin. This is stormwater, just like from the runoff from the building and the area. It had nothing to do with ash. But it was a storm pipe that went under that primary ash basin. And it was corrugated metal. Now, if you know anything about the industry, corrugated metal is not something that you want to use for long term, we have found out. There was a break in that corrugated metal pipe that ran under the ash basin. It was about where the arrow is pointing there. That break in that drainage pipe caused the ash basin to sink into that pipe and go out to the Dan River. So that's what started a lot of the controversy and a lot of the discussion on coal ash. We are now working on our closure plan for all of our ash basins. There's at least one ash basin. Some plants have 2 or 3. There are ash basins at every coal-fired plant because it is obviously a residual of burning coal. So this is our, we're starting working on closure planning, and this has been accelerated. We were already working on a closure plan for some of our plants, but this has been accelerated by the law that the North Carolina legislature put into effect this past year. Right now, our focus is on the Dan River site, River Bend, which is down near Mount Holly, Sutton, which is near, near Wilmington, and then the Asheville plant. Those are some of our older, less efficient plants. They had already been designated for closure, and this is accelerated. At River Bend, for example, is already, they haven't operated at River Bend for 2.5 years, close to 3 years now. But there's still ash basins there because of the years that they did operate. To give you an idea of what does it mean to close an ash basin, what are we talking about as far as volumes? Dan River, the ash basin there, we estimate there's approximately 1.2 million tons of ash. Well, a lot of the environmental groups, a lot of folks are asking us, they want us to physically move that ash, dig up all that coal ash and move it somewhere else, away from primary water drinking sources. So if we're to do this at Dan River, we're looking at about 2 years. Plant Marshall has got 22 million tons of coal ash. A little bit more than we got at Dan River. So you can see that we're looking at site-specific closure plans. We're not going to have a one-size-fits-all plan for the closure of our ash basins because of the circumstances around those ash basins and the size of the ash basins. What works at Dan River is not necessarily going to work at Marshall or any of the plants in between. And I will tell you, there's only one ash basin at Marshall, but it is the largest ash basin of all of our generating plants. The reason being, Marshall has been the epitome of efficiency year after year after year. All these years that we've operated at Plant Marshall, they have continually been one of the most efficient plants in the nation. So what do you do when you've got something that's the best? You run it more. So that's one reason that we have so much more coal ash at Plant Marshall than some of the other plants. So what do you do if you're digging all this up? You got to move it somewhere. So we're having to work with permitting. We're having to find locations to where we can physically move this. Well, then how do you get it there? Well, let's just put a scenario in place. If we were to move the 22 million tons of ash from Plant Marshall, it would take us running the large dump trucks, one truck every 3 minutes, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, for 30 years to get all that ash. So there's another reason that it's not one size fits all, and you can automatically say, yeah, we're going to dig it up and move it. First of all, where are you going to move 22 million tons to, and how long is it going to take there? Now, suppose you live close to Marshall. That means that dump truck's going by your house, day in, day out. So there's a whole nother issue. So it's a very complex and complicated issue that we're dealing with, and there is no simple answer. But just know that we are working diligently to come up with the best solution possible for each particular site. We are always looking for increasingly clean energy. We've been doing that for years. And here's just some of the information that we've been working toward. We've retired half of our coal plants since 2011. We expect 25% more of our fleet to be retired. And you can see all the other dollars, the millions of dollars that we have invested in cleaning up the air, putting these scrubbers, we call them, onto the various plants, the more efficient plants. But regardless of what happens, when it comes to coal ash, when it comes to our generation, when it comes to anything we do, we are committed to closing these ash basins in a way that's timely, environmentally sound, and based on good, sound engineering practices. There's been, you can imagine, anytime there's any kind of, we'll call it a crisis, people come out of the woodworks. They've got the answer. They know exactly how we can handle this and how we do. So you can imagine the calls that we've gotten. But we've got to make sure that whatever solution we come up with is environmentally sound. So that's coal ash, and I'll stop here and say, does anybody have any questions on coal ash? I mean, that was before you talk about Reader's Digest version. Well, let's move real quickly because I know folks, we're all a little short on time. But so how did we get where we are today? How did Duke Power, Duke Energy come into existence? Well, we can thank these three gentlemen, Dr. Gil Wiley, James Buchanan Duke, and William States Lee. These three visionaries, back in the late 1800s, they saw the need, in the early 1900s, they saw the need for some type of electric generation, something to fuel the economy, to help grow the businesses that were there, to help develop these, and they came together. Each one had their own specialty. Dr. Wiley was actually a physician, a medical physician from Chester, South Carolina. Lived primarily most of his adult life in New York. But he loved the area and he saw the need for economic growth. James Buchanan Duke, the famous Duke family, they were basically the financiers. They had the money, and so they were very important in this whole development. And William States Lee was probably one of the top engineers of his time, definitely, and maybe of all time. So these three visionaries came together, and in 1904 they developed and created the Southern Power Company. Now Dr. Wiley had already started a small power company down near Chester called the Catawba Power Company. So they took Catawba Power Company and formed the Southern Power Company in 1904. This is the drawing, or the picture actually, of the first hydroelectric facility along the Catawba River. They saw the opportunity to harness the power of the water all along the Catawba Watery River system. There's a significant fall, and I'll show you a picture of this in just a minute, but there's a significant fall from the headwaters of the Catawba until you get down around Watery, South Carolina. So they saw this as a prime location, a prime spot to develop hydroelectric power, which could then be interconnected by these massive grid systems, these transmission systems, and move it not only to feed just the textile industries that were popping up in the Carolinas and the Piedmont area, but they saw it as a way to interconnect everything and create electric generation usage for everyone in the Piedmont area. But they did start with the textile industry. That was the main focus initially. Oh, let me back up a minute. Sorry about that. So this is where it all started. And they built in around the Great Falls area, they built the Catawba Hydro Plant. Not long after that, they started about 3 other plants and completed those. So by 1911, you had roughly 4 to 5 hydro plants along the Catawba River, mainly in the South Carolina area. So they started looking upstream. And that's when they decided to build Lookout Shoals. Now, Lookout Shoals, as we know, is relatively close to here. This Lookout Shoals Hydro was actually started and completed in about a 2-year time period, and it was completed in 1915. So this was the next opportunity to expand this hydroelectric power and to move back up the Catawba River. So about 1915, in that range, is when Lookout Shoals was completed. Actual pictures from, these are honest, actual old pictures. I haven't just taken some, turned them into black and white. I've had more fun going through our archives, looking at older pictures in preparation for this. But this gives you an idea of Lookout Shoals. And this was some years back when there was still a bridge there in front of the dam. So Lookout Shoals is completed in 1915. Does anybody know what happened in 1916? The Great Flood of 1916. Lookout Shoals during the massive flood. You can see they've still got construction equipment technically there. So the Great Flood of 1916 hit. It was when 2 Category 4 hurricanes converged within about a week and a half time frame on the Catawba River area. And there's some great information online about that, reading that. The Catawba River, up and down the Catawba River, rose to about an average of 47 feet above flood stage. It literally wiped out every bridge from Marion to Great Falls, South Carolina. There was 1 bridge left remaining up toward Marion, but everything on either side of it was cut off. So there was literally no way across the Catawba River after this great flood. Catawba County area, Hickory, was isolated. Massive damage. Homes were destroyed. Farmland was just absolutely raked clean. Crops were gone. And along with that, the hydro plants that were up and down the Catawba River also maintained substantial damage. Now remember I said Lookout was just finished in 1915. Okay? There was a huge crack developed in the dam at Lookout. So it suffered damage there, and also the powerhouse, which is, well, not in this picture, but the powerhouse which sits over to the side, it was also underwater. So you can imagine what water does to electric generation equipment. Well, this was typical all up and down the Catawba Watery River system. There was damage, massive damage, destruction, and even in dollars of 1915, extremely, we're talking millions of dollars even in that time frame. So James B. Duke and Dr. Wiley are talking about the Great Flood of 1916. And from what I've read, you know, I'll use the word infuriated. James B. Duke was just livid that he had lost all this money, that all this damage, it was going to cost all this money to get the system back in place. And at that point they said, we've got to find a way that this doesn't happen again. So as a result of that, now keep in mind, the flood was in July of 1916. By August of 1916, they had decided to build Bridgewater Hydro in Lake James with the 3 interconnected dams around Lake James. They realized that there had to be something else in place to help with this flood control. That if you put dams ever so often, that you could actually help with the flood control. So that is how the Lake James development and Bridgewater came about. You've got the 3 dams around Lake James, Catawba, Linville, and Patty's Creek. It's actually formed by the Linville River and the Catawba River. So they said if you do something close to the headwaters of the Catawba, make the lake large enough that it becomes a storage facility, you can then help with flood control down the river. So that, in essence, is how Lake James was developed, or the decision for Lake James to be developed. Road Hiss was then added in 1925. So Lake James, Bridgewater goes operational in 1919. Road Hiss is then added in 1925, and you then have the 3 dams of the Upper Catawba. 1940 rolls along. What happened in 1940? There was another flood. This flood, reportedly, from the amount of rainfall and the force of the 1940 flood, was, in meteorological terms, worse than 1916. The flooding was much less severe, though. The high water mark in Morganton was 15 feet below what it was in 1916. So this proved their theory that, yes, if you put these controls along the river system, you can help with the flood control. You can't stop it. You can never stop flooding. You can never stop how much is coming down, but you can help control it. And to this day, that's exactly what we do. Each lake and dam and hydro operation up and down the Catawba Watery works in connection with the others. What we do at Bridgewater in Marion has an effect on what happens at Watery down in South Carolina at the end of the system. So there is still to this day, it's operated in conjunction. Our folks can tell you how fast water's coming in at Lake James, how fast it's going out, what happens if they run 1 unit, 2 units, what happens if they don't run, and they can help control that flooding and help control that all up and down. Like I said, you can't prevent it, but you can at least help control it by doing the interactive work of each of these. So, so that set the stage. We've got the majority of the dams and rivers, dams up and down the Upper Catawba. So this brings us then to 1927 and the decision to create Lake Hickory and Oxford. So in the scheme of things, Oxford is actually one of the newer dams on the Catawba River. In fact, it was the last dam and hydro facility built along the Catawba River until 1960. So from 1927, construction, 28 completion, until 1960, with the construction of Cowan's Ford Dam, there was no hydro construction up and down the Catawba River. Oxford Dam, anybody know where we got the name Oxford? Now, you look at all the different facilities around Duke, and they're named after some executive, some VP, some president, some CEO. Lake Norman, Lake James is after James B. Duke. And where did we come up with Oxford? Any clue? It was an early settler in the area named Samuel Oxford, and he had come here from, I believe, Virginia, and came to the area. He found a good place in the Catawba River to ford the river, which was important, and decided to make his home close by. So then he realized that it wasn't going to be very many days that he was going to be able to ford the river without some type of ferry, so he built a ferry system, which was actually the first commercial ferry system in the area. So he ran this commercial ferry system in this area for some period of time. And that's how, when we did the history on this, that's how we came up with the name for Oxford Dam. So a little tidbit of information there. But by the 1940s, with the construction of Oxford Dam, there were 12 plants, 12 hydroelectric plants along the Catawba River system. And that equated, we had enough storage and enough generation capacity for 227 million kilowatt hours. So you think about, your average home may use 1,000, 2,000 kilowatt hours. Think about 227 million, and that was in the 40s. So let's talk just a little bit about, how did we get this massive dam built? Each dam has had their own little unique construction opportunities. But this was the early stages of the construction of Oxford Dam. You can see they're just barely coming up out of the ground here with it. And then a little bit further here. So this is the beginnings of Oxford Dam. When completed, it rises 950 feet above sea level. So that's the height of the dam. I'm just going to flip through some different construction photos for you. This is the powerhouse. This is where we house the equipment that actually generates the power. So you can see the beginnings of the powerhouse on the left. It's a little further along. See all the railroad tracks? Railroad tracks were very critical because that was the only way we really had getting material to the construction site. They started in 1925 building the railroad tracks from Newton up to the dam. So for 2 years before we actually started working on the dam, we were working on railroad tracks just to get the equipment and materials there that we needed. From 1928, 28, until 1997, think about that time period, 70 years. This dam was manned 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We had roughly 7 to 8 employees round the clock working at the dam. They did everything. They did all the maintenance, they did all the operation, they opened the gates, they started the generators. Anything that needed to be done was manned around the clock. In 1997, we went in and put a massive upgrade system to where we no longer had to have it manned 24 hours a day. We went from 7 employees to 1 employee. Because now, all of the generators, everything operational, except for the gates, so I will put that caveat in there, everything operational can be controlled by our Hydro Central folks in Charlotte. There does not have to be a single person sitting at Oxford Dam to start that generator, either one of them. There's 2 units. So that was a massive, massive upgrade that we put in 1997. So for 70 years, though, we had relied purely on manpower to operate the dam. But we did move that down from 7 employees down to 1. Now we talked about the gates. I said that that's the one thing that you can't do from Charlotte. These massive gates, there's 10 gates. To move these gates up and down, folks literally have to go out in these cranes on top of the gates and hook the hoist to them and run them up. So that is still a manual operation. We are in the process of doing some upgrades to that, but it'll still be require somebody to be on site to do that. I know I'm running short of time here, but just a couple more pictures real quick. And let me talk briefly about high water events. We talked some about flooding. Let me talk briefly about high water events because I know there's a lot of discussion when we do get flooding, do get high water events. Why do you never let Hickory flood? Why do you never let it get over 100? Well, the main reason, there's 2 reasons, safety, and they both relate to the gate operation. remember I said that it's a manual operation, people still have to go and actually hook to that. Well, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want to be out there trying to hook onto a gate and have water rushing by my feet. That's not safe, and so that's why we try to never let it get over 100, because once it gets to what we call 100, it's going to start going over the gates. The second reason is these gates are designed to hold back water. They are not designed to let water run over the top of them. So continual high pressure water going over the top could potentially damage the gates. And so that's the main reason. When folks say, well, you're just protecting the rich people that live on Lake Hickory. No, we're protecting our investment and our employees that work at Oxford Dam. Real quick, remember I mentioned Lake James is at the headwaters. You go from an elevation of 1,200 feet all the way down to 147 feet in Rotary. So this is some sort of a cross-cut diagram of the Catawba Rotary system. There's a lot going on with the Catawba Rotary system that I'm not going to go into today because we can spend a whole day just talking about that. But this just gives you an idea. 13 hydro stations and 220 river miles. And with that, any questions?
Well, we're running a little late,
Okay.
so we'll.
I apologize. Thank you so much.
Sure, Ron will be here just a little bit if you have a particular question, and you're right, we could go on all day about that. It's really, the history of it is incredible and so important to this area for sure. One of the reasons that they come is that businesses come here is because we have good, clean, cheap power, so it helps us all. And I wanted to give you a copy of our four-way test for your desk. Thank you for being here. Remember your cart buckets, and Chip, if you'll come for the surplus self-raffle. Ben and Michael, thank you for visiting with us today. And visiting Rotarians, thank you as well. I need the, yeah.
Okay. Oh, you're one of those rich people that live on Lake Hickory?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
They flood downstream so Chip won't get flooded.
You'll pull one.
Okay.
We have $2,115 in the pot today, and 27 cards, I think.
545-129. 545-129. All right. Probably gonna donate it all back.
She gets half a pot, Mark.
And an ace, a black ace, but the wrong one. So close. Okay, thanks, and remember those events in February, and remember to be here every week. We've got a great day. If you'll stand with me, we'll join with the four-way test. Of the things we think, say, and do. This is the truth.